Welcome all to Curious to Know. Today I'm joined by Brandon Koprivnjak. How are you, Brandon?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. We've been talking for about, I'd say, 2 months now. Been
Yep.
trying to sort something out, and we're finally here. So Brandon is from TSM Strata. He's the group executive over there. Comes with a lot of experience and a lot of stories, particularly towards the Strata world. I wanted to ask you, Brandon. So you began on the front line and you worked your way into executive leadership at TSM Strata. What did you believe about Strata at the beginning when it comes to experience that proved completely wrong? So everything they knew about Strata when you first started.
I think Strata kept going into it was mainly like an administrative role. Doing paperwork, folding levy notices back in the day,
Yep.
sending them out. But it's actually a lot more technical. You learn a lot of skills along the way. Dealing with engineers and builders and insurance. You definitely get really hands on within the tools of it all. And
Yep.
yeah,
So what was the first incident that sort of showed you that it was more than just an administration type role?
when I moved from mainly an assisting role to being lumped with a full portfolio at
Yeah.
around seven when I was 17. Had 80 buildings in my portfolio. It was just a bit chaotic and just getting into the nitty gritty of it and understanding how it works and actually the things you need to do to ensure that you're managing the portfolio to a good standard and yeah.
So, in a nutshell, for a viewer that might not know what strata is, because you usually hear when someone purchases an apartment, you always hear, oh, there's a strata levy, there's this levy, there's this levy. What is strata in a nutshell, just so for someone to completely understand what it is?
Strata is a range of different things. It's governance of a building and financial management of a building, and managing people essentially within a building and understanding their shared ownership and what they're responsible for and what they're not responsible for.
Okay. What kind of person strives in strata management? What kind of person, because I've heard stories where some people might get chewed up in the industry. So, what kind of person thrives? And what kind of person, gets chewed? And were you, when you first started out, were you the type it's like, shit, I might get chewed out. Actually, you know what? This is actually meant for me. So, how did you know in particular for yourself?
Um, you definitely need thick skin and being able to juggle multiple things at once. And that's something I like to do. I like to, um, you know, do multiple things and help people and try and get the best outcome. So yeah, definitely someone that has resilience and the determination to really help and see and client in our perspective like succeed and
Yeah.
yeah.
Whether you're dealing with building managers or you're dealing with engineers or whoever like any stakeholders that you are dealing with, was there a period of time where you sort of considered like you'd want to walk away from the industry because sometimes it might get a bit too chaotic?
I think every manager goes through a period where no matter how much you try and help a client, you just can't win. And no matter how much you're invested emotionally into that, and sometimes you need to learn to separate your emotion to your job. But I think every manager kind of goes to that period where no matter how hard they try, they always can't seem to break through with a particular client, and that can really sometimes
So what's
bring
a
them down.
story if you can share where it's like sort of you're breaking the barrier between yourself and the client where like they're comfortable, they now understand you, you understand them, and you guys can work, together.
Um,
You don't have to mention specific names. You could just like give an example.
yeah, I think a lot of it comes from when there's a particular drive that obviously you're dealing with lots of personalities, multiple different people in a building. Sometimes personality clashes, um, and first step is always to try and get everyone in the room and try and resolve it that way.
Yep.
Sometimes it might just be a personality thing, and we need to move them on to a different manager to work with, and they thrive with that manager. So, um, yeah, it really depends on the scenario and what kind of the challenges you're having. Some are just that they've lost trust, which something's happened or they've come from previous.
What makes them sort of lose trust in particular? Like, what's a certain thing where it can be any strata agency where
Yeah.
the client might feel, okay, maybe it might be after a committee meeting or something like that,
Mm.
where they might lose trust. Like, what sort of causes that distrust?
It may have just been like a miscommunication or misunderstanding on a bit. A lot of the times, especially when there's big projects or money involved, um, trying to actually understand the technical side of it. Like strata managers are very good at knowing the technical side, but explaining it in layman's terms to what
Yeah,
ordinary people can understand. And that sometimes, if you can't communicate that clearly, the trust breaks down.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I was to say, so when you've identified like a defect in a building, as an example, you guys are obtaining an engineer's report. Then you have to obviously assign a building practitioner that's registered, obviously. Where does the current strata remedial process sort of become delayed or disconnected in that regard?
Yeah, I think the delay really comes from before anything technical happens. It's trying to identify what the actual issue is and spending the money to investigate that, which a lot of clients are reluctant to do that,
Mm.
and result to band-aid fixes or quick fixes.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so the clock starts ticking then. So by the time you get a proper investigation done to identify the cause, get your engineers in, they do their technical specs, the design and building practitioner act, put another spanner in the works,
Yep.
having to get those regulated designs done, tendering that process, and each stage takes weeks in their own to develop and
Yep.
go ahead. Um, and then the approval process, make sure the client actually understands the full pathway, getting the right approvals for it. Right, where are you sourcing your funding from? Do you have money in the capital works fund? Do you need to go elsewhere or raise funds another way? So that delay in itself, it can take several months to really get to a stage where works can actually commence.
Has Strata always been like that, or it's just more because there's red tape, obviously, that's now? Is that why it's sort of delaying that process? Like, what's the main factor that's causing that delay?
I think the delay is understanding the new regulations and the technicality of
Mm.
it.
Yep.
Also, engineers that they're busy as well. They're inundated with all the extra work that they
Yep.
have to do. So that delays the process. So by the time you get an engineer report, a specification done, and
Yep.
designs, it's like almost 4 to 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
Just do that.
Wanted to also ask: do percentage-based insurance commissions, do they encourage higher premiums, and can owners clearly see who is receiving each fee or commission, like as of right now?
I think now the disclosure practice has evolved quite a lot.
Yep.
Where when you're quoting, it's broken down exactly where the remuneration's going, how much the broker's getting, what they're charging, and the remuneration to the strata manager and the underwriters.
Yep.
Um, which wasn't necessarily the case, and now it's always it's in the AGM documents, the meeting
Mm.
documents.
Just
Um,
want to pause you there.
yeah,
Always hear that. I know what it is, but other people might not know. What's AGM documents? Just so for people that you're gonna have to
yeah,
really
yeah,
break
yeah.
it down. Some people might not know what they
Yeah,
are.
so like the annual general meeting
Yep.
documentation says in the agenda notice and
Yep.
the minutes. Um, but in terms of the insurance, like at the end of the day, the market has changed a lot over the last, you know, 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
Base premiums have increased, and obviously, naturally, they are commission based in terms of insurance commissions. That increases with it. It's not necessarily something that I believe is um, relevant to today. It's like it doesn't necessarily reflect the work that we do in for that for that commission being received.
Yep.
Because just of the nature of how premiums are working nowadays. So that's why you see more and more companies are restructuring their fee models to kind of um, remove that from the equation and put a real like service fee models like this is your fee for like actual strata management costs without it being subsidized by other revenues.
Okay. The recent controversy that's happened now with Net Strata. Did the Net Strata investigation sort of expose, how do I say this, an isolated case or maybe a wider industry problem involving conflicts, related suppliers, and other undisclosed financial benefits? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I can't really speak to the specifics of that investigation, but I think generally like the framework as it is with insurance commissions and
Yep.
referral fees. It's not just isolated to one company. I think it's something that's been not just in the strata industry, in many industries
Yeah.
for years. I think it's obviously brought to light, and um, there's been steps put in place to limit that. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's the consumer that needs to know. It's not necessarily like every relationship or arrangement is misappropriate. It's more so how that is shown to the consumer, and so they know exactly how each party is getting remunerated. Really.
So if you talk about TSM Strata,
Mm-hmm.
what is TSM Strata doing different than other agencies, and how are they taking care of their clients in 2026?
Well, we started phasing out our insurance commissions as of towards the end of last year.
Yep.
So all our new contracts um, are being changed to that fee structure, and obviously training with the staff on how to identify conflicts and how to address those in meetings, whether it's with suppliers or with committee members who are bringing on their own, brother or someone who
They're going
wants
to
to
do
do
their own
some work.
tenders. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just educating the staff as well, how to address those and make sure it's as transparent as possible.
Okay. Just on the remedial side, are remedial works sometimes being gate kept through a preferred network, like we're talking about now? A community member might, tender on their own. They might get their brother or cousin.
Yeah.
And what happens when a committee member, a consultant, or other decision makers, they seek, sometimes seeks a benefit for influencing who receives that work?
I don't think there's anything wrong with having a preferred network of suppliers.
Yep.
Obviously, from a manager's point of view, if you know that someone has consistently good work, they're responsive, they've got all the appropriate licenses and insurances, and you can put them forward. That I don't see there's anything no issue with that, as
Mm.
long as if there are any relationships there, that's obviously disclosed to the client beforehand.
Yep.
Um, the issue really is when it becomes like a closed network, when you don't allow anyone else. There's no competitive tender process.
Yep.
You're locked into these are the only trades you can use. I don't think that's really fair on the client side of things.
Yep.
But that being said, like we've had instances where we've gone through the whole tender processes and clients want to bring on a contractor, and then they haven't been able to fulfill their insurance requirements, so then the whole thing has to start again, which again causes
Oh, wow.
delays. So I think as long as if there are other trades coming into the process, that they're going under the same tender process with the engineers, same scope, they're following it.
Have you ever had trades where like a community member might suggest someone and everyone knows they're not registered, but it's like, okay, they're a community member, let's just let it slide, or no?
Um, there are instances like in terms of register, as in like they're not qualified to do the work, or
Like they might not have all the license to do it, but like they know that they can still do it. But on the strata side, it's like we don't want to bring these people in because we know like if something happened after a defect,
Yeah.
then we're gonna be held liable. But it's like this community member, we might know them. Like, has that ever happened, or does that still happen in the industry?
it happens occasionally, and I think at that point, like our managers know to not give them the advice of
Yeah.
the correct advice and leave it up to them. We won't get involved or make sure it's properly documented that we've given them that advice.
All right. When it comes to the extra levies, when the additional costs, they deplete the capital works fund, as we were talking about before, and they force owners into special levies or strata loans. How could a more transparent, competitive, and streamlined process protect them on that side? Yeah.
I think definitely ensuring that you are getting the right professionals in the instance to do a proper specification. So
Yep.
that's the first thing. That way, no matter who you're getting, they're quoting like for items.
Yep.
Having and I know a lot of clients try to avoid this step because it does cost money, but having the project manager or engineer who's is the superintendent on that work have their briefing meetings with those contractors as part of the tender process, so they can see the building, exactly know what they're quoting on, limits your, the amount of variations and things that they may not understand while just quoting based on paperwork.
Yep.
Um, and then just understanding how you're going to fund it before you start the work, or want to start the work
Yeah.
and award,
Yep.
or award the quote. And just keeping owners informed. Like, owners aren't necessarily privy to a lot of the day-to-day communications that committees have with the managers or what's going on. So regular meetings inform owners, like, decisions that they're making, or potentially making. So just so they're not just
Mm.
don't just have a shock at the end of the annual general meeting when it comes up.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I get you. Strata companies, can they hold a developer accountable for defects while also wanting the developer's next 10 buildings? Like, you might, they'll tell you, they'll approach TSM Strata, be like, we want to give this to you. The Strata's going to be on there. But then if you guys find defects in there, how do you sort of manage that tension? Like, you found a defect and that's the developer. Like, what happens after that kind of situation?
Yeah, well, the first thing is always, like, to protect our client's interest, which is the owners corporation, or
Yeah.
the Strata scheme. Um, with developers and defects, I think um, there has to be a balanced approach to it. Yes, they've got obligations to fix their defects, but coming in hot all the time doesn't necessarily ease that process. So sometimes just getting in the room, sitting down at the table, and addressing defects.
Yep.
Obviously, owners corporation needs to have proper expert reports to identify that they are actual defects as well. But most of the time, developers are very willing to come back and fix um, defects within the building.
Yep.
Is a lot of the time when you see there's a lot of negative um, connotations kind of around developers and new buildings, and the first reaction for owners when there are defects is to have a very, like, aggressive approach to it, where
Yep.
sometimes that doesn't necessarily work in their favor as well.
Okay. I'm going to flip it to now, after the budget.
Yeah.
Obviously, those in the property world sort of, what's the best word to say, saw more negatives than there are positives. Now, there's obviously a lot more high density projects that are going to be occurring, whether it's New South Wales or Queensland. So obviously Strata's going to be more involved now, because there's going to be more apartment builds. When it comes to you personally, where do you see property investing when it comes to apartments? Can buying the wrong apartment set you back 10 years financially, even though, so, like, let's say I know someone who bought in actually just in Cronulla an apartment for 990,000, but the strata on there was 3,500 a quarter. That's quite large. But then they had said to me that the rental that they're getting a week was 1,400. I'm like, okay, we start adding the numbers up. It's a decent yield, but how much, especially on your side, you're seeing strata. I'm pretty sure you've invested in property. I'm pretty sure, like anyone else. How much does strata levies play a role when it comes to investing, or should someone be like, my rental is going to be covering that anyway, or like what certain things should people be looking into when it comes to investment, the mixing strata and the yields?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I see is letting the defects drag on over extended period of time, instead of just knuckling down and resolving the issue, because even though your levies might be quite high during that period to get your reports, get your defects done,
Yep.
that prolonging it would just create that hardship even more. So if if you get into the crux of it, get it done, and then everything can go back to semi-normal state.
Yep.
You're lessening that time period where you're paying those larger levies. Your insurance premiums will go down. Your defects are fixed. You're not having water ingress issues. You're not having to spend multiple people investigating different things. You just get it all done and in a reasonable time frame, and not let it drag on. Or if you're working with a developer or builder who's not coming to the party, who's not reasonable, and give it, just keeping on delaying it, we see that that's can impact that obviously.
Um, to you, what separates apartments that sort of outperform the market? Because if you look out towards Melbourne, that's a perfect example. If you go towards Collins Street, for example,
Yeah.
it's like the main area in Melbourne. You've got a lot of vacant apartments over there, and the people that are investing, there's a lot of high strata fees there. Then you look towards Sydney, as my what will I say, best mates, they like calling, those orange units. They like to call them the red bricks.
Yeah.
That's what they like to call them.
Yeah.
They always say it's better for us to be putting money into like the red brick apartment, so to say, than buying a new build.
Yeah.
Do you also see that? Do you agree with that, or do you think maybe the new builds are better in terms of investment?
I think Melbourne and New South Wales are very different in terms of how their strata is structured,
Mm.
and I think that plays a bit of a role in Melbourne, because you see a lot of their buildings are not really maintained that well because they don't have the safeguard of mandatory capital works fund plans, and the boundaries of who's responsible for waterproofing, for example, is a lot different to New
Why
South
is that?
Wales.
Why is that?
Um, it's the way that just how they structure their strata boundaries,
Okay.
on their plan of subdivisions. So like in Melbourne you'll have an owner's waterproofing failings. Generally it's that owner's responsibility to fix it. Whereas
Yeah.
in New South Wales, the strata will fix it.
Okay.
So
I did not know.
yeah, so Melbourne, it's a bit harder to proactively address those types of issues. So yeah, they have pros and cons in both.
Yeah.
New South Wales, I think, is more structured in terms of long-term saving and maintenance of buildings.
Yep.
And generally the older style buildings, they're generally pretty good in terms
Yeah.
of the maintenance. But with all buildings, when they get older, they might need to have underpinning works and things done on them. So in terms of investment wise, I don't. I think it's more so how the building is being run and managed.
So the building, okay. So
If
the
they're
building
proactively
management.
carrying out
Yeah.
maintenance, if there are issues, like they're proactively investigating it, not just putting it on the back burner.
So like with you saying that, how much does a well-run strata actually add to property value? So like if there is a good strata system that is in place for an investor looking into it, like if they're going to be purchasing an apartment, should they be straight away inquiring, oh, who's the strata agency that's on this, so I can maybe take a look at like what kind of portfolio they have, so I can make my decision better.
Well, I think the Strata manager plays a part in guiding the committee how they should be running the building.
Yep.
Look, I would first thing look at their records and see, are they actually having regular meetings? Are they a proactive committee that are addressing things? Because a lot of now with emails, everything is like saved on in everyone's inboxes. It's not
Yep.
really properly documented what's going on in the building.
Mm.
Where 10 years ago everything was in letters. You wrote a letter, saved on those
Yeah.
owners corporation files.
Yeah.
So it was a lot more active in that sense. But that's why we always push our committees to have regular meetings. So when people are looking to buy into places, they can see it's well run. That they're aware of these issues. This is how they're addressing it. Where sometimes those misalignments can be when people, they might be a bit weary buying into a property when they don't have full records of what's exactly going on.
So what's a checklist that you would use for yourself if you're like, for example, looking into an apartment and also coming with the strata mind as well?
Yeah.
What's the thing that you put into your mind that you could help maybe a viewer when it comes to that on the investment side, them thinking about strata, all those types of a checklist?
Yeah, I'll say that they're like regularly reviewing their 10-year plan, not
Okay.
just like getting one plan to tick a box and have it on file,
Yep.
to actually review it. If you're not meeting, if the building isn't meeting contributions
Yep.
as what's expected, and they've had a few remedial works here and there,
Yep.
get the plan updated to what the current status is, so you can start restructuring the building plan. Regular meetings for the committee. If what kind of disputes there are. If sometimes there might be a few disputes that aren't necessarily that important when they've got multiple
Mm.
other major things that they need going on. So
Yep.
just seeing those kind of dynamics in the building, I guess, will
So
be.
what are things that they can ask prior? So like if they're speaking to an agent and they can ask when it comes on the strata side, they can put like a piece on their mind.
I think as long as they've got a healthy capital works fund balance, which is
You can ask that for an agent,
well, they
like to
should
a
be
real
able.
estate agent. That
For a
is, yeah.
real estate agents, they their job's to sell the property, right?
Of course, but
So
I'm saying
they,
like if
the,
someone is doing
I would
want to do
ask
their
for
due
a strata
diligence,
inspection
yeah,
report,
okay,
and a lot of them have like pre-purchase reports where they just do one report and then sell it on to everyone else.
okay,
Um, a lot can happen in a couple months
yeah,
from when that report was done. So I would always
okay,
recommend get an updated or your own independent report done,
yeah,
especially if it's done by an agent working on behalf of the vendor. It might
okay,
they might
yeah.
so I'd always recommend get your own independent report done.
On your side, because you see a lot of stakeholders, whether it's engineers, it's builders, building managers, you see a lot of stakeholders. Do you think remediation will probably be, especially with now the government wants to focus on more high density projects? Do you think remediation is probably going to be Australia's largest industry in terms of construction right now, or no?
I think with the protections with the Design and Building Practitioners Act, I think it's a
Yeah,
lot more with new builds. Um, I think it's a step in the right direction for new builds and getting that level of compliance from the start.
yeah,
I think with existing buildings having that layer on top of it is a bit counterproductive with
mm.
just in terms of like consumer costs and how much they have to outlay to meet those compliance requirements as well. So I think a little bit of work needs to be done in terms of the existing buildings and that
Yeah.
side. But yeah, I think overall
You think remediation is going to continue to
it's
grow
it's
because of
I think it will eventually settle down
okay,
with the new builds coming in and with the new compliance requirements.
yeah.
Um, yeah,
Do you think investors are focusing too much on suburbs and not on the building itself? Like if they're looking to invest, they'll be like, my mate, perfect example is like, it's Cronulla. I want to buy in Cronulla. I don't care what the apartment is. I just know that I just want to focus on the suburb. When you're looking towards investment, that is, should people just be focusing on just the suburb, or actually look even deeper, to be making sure they're getting a good return on their money?
I think from investment, well, the idea of investing is to get a good return on your investment. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think
But some people like me, like you don't want to buy an apartment in Coogee, but hold on, but the strata over there is like way higher compared to maybe somewhere else. So should people just be factoring that in, or not really when it comes to apartments? Like should they, what, I'm just gonna buy in Coogee, gonna buy in like a hotspot area.
every building has its own circumstances. There's a reason why levies are high if they're high.
Mm.
Um, that they may have had a fire in the building at some point. Their insurance premium has tripled. So I think just understanding the history of the building and knowing why the levies are actually at that rate and is there potential for it to go down. Um, we manage properties who have levies way higher than what they need to be just because they want extra money in the account for a rainy day.
Mm.
So every building is very different depending on their circumstances and how the people in the building are.
Yep. Um, in terms of when it comes to working with developers, how often do you find with developers where they might say to you, "Hey, look, Brandon, we have this building, we have this project that's coming up, and we want you, of course, on there when it comes to Strata." When they then bring you on, you don't only just find defects, but people are not buying those apartments, but you guys are involved on there. Does that do anything for you guys at all, or because who's going to be paying like the strata after? That's one part I've been asked. That's why I thought I'd just ask you.
Yeah. Um, so when if you're setting up like establishing a owners corporation or a building
Yeah,
when it's just been built, obviously part of your role as if you're assisting with that is to ensure the levies are like the budget is accurate, and
Yep.
and obviously the levies are derived from that. If the developer still owns majority of the apartments, like they still pay the levies. It's
Oh,
a
okay.
legal requirement. They
Okay.
can't get out of it.
Yep.
Yeah, so they fall under every other recovery process or um, collection.
All right. And finally, I wanted to ask you if you could fix. I know there's a gazillion things. If you could fix one thing in the strata world right now, what would it be? I see the smile on his face.
I think the perception of strata managers. Most of us are here to work with the clients and see your property well maintained and succeed in that way,
Yep.
and just having a working team relationship. I think there's a lot of us against them with committees and clients and strata managers. I think we all need to work together and for the better of everyone.
So that's more of a perception matter,
More of a
sort of.
perception matter. I think that, look, there's obviously um, I can write a whole list of things, but
Well,
I
that's
think
what you can do
I
it
think
if you want.
I think like there's obviously apartments aren't going anywhere. They're
Of
being
course,
built.
of course.
You need managers to manage them. There's not enough managers, and
Yep.
a lot of that is because of the negative response we get a lot of the time from clients. So if we can shift that perspective, you have people actually wanting to be in the role,
Yep.
and you'll have enough managers to manage the buildings instead of being at capacity trying to
Yeah.
trying to please everyone.
All right. Brandon, it was amazing having you on. You've really gone into depth on everything when it comes to Strata. Just let everyone know where they can find you and any projects that you guys are currently working on. Yeah, the floor's yours.
At on LinkedIn, Brandon Koprivnjak, or tsm.strata.com.au.
All right.